y después sea el español o el inglés como su idioma.
Okay, thank you for that. Jessica, how's it going on your end? Ready to kick off?
I think we are. I do see, oops, click the got it button. I see that we have all the folks on our end we expect to have. I do see that we have our co-lead, so I think we're ready to go.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for that. And thank you everyone for being here today. I know it's especially difficult to be, going through our productive days when all of this is going on. So I'm gonna go ahead and just kick us off with our usual housekeeping remarks, and then just want to make a small remark about what's happening in our country right now, if it's okay with you all. But again, my name is Daniela Flores. For any new folks that are joining us, I'm from the Hardin Company Community Research Team, your facilitation team. And, as you know, we have Liz Lev and Dr. Amy Ramos. In addition, today we have another member, Dr. Gemma Cardona, who's joining our team. And, you'll see them come in and out as facilitators as well. So I'm grateful that they're with us. And if you do have any technology issues, you can feel free to message them directly and they'll be able to help you. Displayed on here, you see a very usual slide. You see we ask that if you are able to rename yourself, if you're able to look for the name, the menu option to change your name, we follow the convention so that we can indicate if a person is a CSC member and if they're a resident. In particular, if you are in a household with multiple people, it's always very important to make sure that all of you that are there, you put the names of everyone that's present. That way we can mark you here. I'll leave that one in Spanish for a moment. And I think we have a few other people that have joined us now. So again, welcome if you're just joining us. You're here for the May meeting number 18. Again, thank you for your commitment to be here, to your commitment to AB 617. We're very grateful that you all attended several extra meetings to really help ensure that there was this meaningful engagement in the discussions as you all approach a very important milestone with the community emissions reduction program. And really it's because of you and your continuous input that the SERP is being developed with your priorities and with a collective consensus about that. And so, this meeting is very important. You're very close to getting at a document, SERP document that folks agree on, a key milestone in your efforts here that really are going to allow you to start implementing a lot of the priorities and the ideas that you all came up with. So again, just want to welcome you, and I'll leave the instructions here for one more moment. I think folks, just reminding you if you need to transition to the Spanish channel that you're able to do that. And maybe we can just do one more announcement on these instructions. So if you want to select the channel, you basically look for the globe under the menu bar. It says interpretation and there's a globe symbol. You want to make sure that you press either English or Spanish.
Bueno, una vez más, por las personas que llegaron hace poco, queremos avisarles que el sistema de interpretación está encendido. Como siempre van a encontrar el icono del globo en la parte inferior de la pantalla. Por favor, denle clic y seleccionen sea el español como su idioma. Gracias.
Thank you, José Luis. Okay, with that, if it's okay, I'm going to take a couple moments just to share the faces of these beautiful souls that are in my screen. I know today's feeling extra heavy. It is for us, and our hearts are broken with the news that we've had to hear over the last several weeks. And, you know, we want to create space where everyone can show up as themselves, can show up as their full selves. And you know, showing up today is a little bit more difficult, definitely for our team, and I'm sure for a lot of you as well. So, you know, I definitely, if their district or anyone else would like to make any remarks, but at this moment, I just want to honor these beautiful souls that lost their lives too soon. And, you know, maybe we can have hold some space for a moment for them, a moment of silence for them, and just hold them in our hearts, and just know that we are mourning together with you all, and you know, makes this work feel that much more important, because we know that these issues are all connected. And so we're here for all of you, and hope to you know, mourn and heal as a community together today and always. So I'll just you know, pause for a moment of silence for them. Thank you, everyone. Would anyone else like to use this space to share anything else about the moment in time? Okay, thank you again for holding that space. With that, you know, I'm kindly moving us along to the work that we have ahead, and you know, just putting up some reminders on the usual things that we go through in these meetings as a group. You know, it helps us a lot to get through this meeting, as folks are mindful of their microphone, making sure that they're muted, you know, using the Zoom hand feature so that you can engage in the discussion. If you're joining us by phone, you can press *6 if you want to unmute yourself. And if you want to raise your virtual hand on the phone, you press *9. For those residents that are part of the stipend program, just a brief reminder that to be eligible for that stipend, you should stay at least 75% of the meeting, which, you know, you all almost always do. So I'm gonna have here again transition us to the group agreements that you all have agreed as a group. You know, we ask that you really do focus on solutions and the opportunities, and the productive dialogue, in hopes to achieve the meeting goals for today. You know, creating space for everyone to have a chance to speak by stepping up and stepping back when folks need to create space for others. As always, we ask that we ground all of our conversations in respect. Try to keep track of the time to make sure that we can respect you all and all the things you have to do once it hits 7 p.m. And then really focusing on the issues whenever we're having those discussions about the things we care about, and as always, seek to find common ground. Just briefly share, this is an overview of the agenda. Most of the time today is really to hear from you any other thoughts you have about the Community Emissions Reduction Program draft document, as well as some of the SERP measures that have been in conversation. You see on here at 6:30 that there was a vote scheduled. You'll hear from the co-leads in a moment to tell you more about where we're at with that. And, you know, of course, we'll wrap up and tell you more about the meetings that we have planned ahead, as well as the topics that we have planned ahead. And of course, if there are any public members that wish to address the CSC, there will be an opportunity for public comments as well. Great. With that, I would like to turn it over and welcome Gustavo Aguirre to begin with some opening remarks for us.
Yes, how's it going, everyone? Good evening, and thank you all so much for joining us. And thank you so much, Daniela and team, for providing and opening that space, against the senseless violence that we're living in this country, right? And it reminds us that there's a lot of evil, but there's also a lot of good, right? And as I see everyone today, I really get excited because, we're all participating from different walks of life and from different backgrounds and perspectives, and really, working together to strive forward. So even though there is some darkness, where we live, there's also a lot of light, and I want to uphold that, right? And I want to make sure that we move forward today and acknowledge all the hard work that we've done, right? We're 10 plus meetings in, we've dialogued so much and have worked so hard. The residents, the air districts, the facilitators, the stakeholders today to potentially bring, this SERP of community emission reductions plan to life, right? And so thank you so much, everyone, for joining us. As they stated here in the beginning, we're kind of coming to the conclusion of this process of the development of the SERP, right? Which was kind of like stage one, if you will, of AB 617. And once approved, after having all the discussions that we need to have, once approved, we'll move into the implementation phase, right? Which is the next year and move, or the next rest of this year, moving forward on how we actually start putting this capital to work and seeing these projects go into these communities. And so with that, we've done plenty of surveys, we've had plenty of meetings. We thankfully had that in-person meeting in Arvin where we got together. We were able to dialogue and discuss issues in the 617 program and kind of pretty much narrow down, all of us collectively what we thought was the best steps moving forward. And with that, comes the discussion today of wrapping up the last, sections of the SERP, putting everything on the table, answering every question or asking every question, if you will, clarifying and making sure that we all collectively understand and are very clear of what the SERPs and the strategies are and what they're not, right? So we have this good understanding moving forward. And if tonight we get to the opportunity to have a vote, we definitely could accommodate that. If we have a very, thorough discussion and a discussion where we are not or we're not able to have a vote tonight, we've talked with the Air District, we've talked with our facilitators, and it seems like, if need be, we do have the option to have a meeting. Obviously, it will be a lot shorter meeting, but it will be a meeting where we just would focus on the vote, right? And so after tonight, if we don't get to that vote, the next meeting will be June 6th. So Monday, June 6th. It would be obviously a lot shorter meeting. We will come on here, just answer, any clarifying questions and get to the vote, right? Assuming that tonight we don't vote on that. And so very excited about this moving forward, excited about all the discussions that are going to be had tonight. That way we are in a space where we all collectively as CSC could be happy and approve this SERP moving forward, or if there's still things that we got to work out, that we do it tonight, right? That way we could have our vote either tonight or latest by June 6th, right? Moving forward, this plan will be then brought forth to the Air District, the states, and then ready to rock and roll. So thank you all so much for joining us. We have our other community lead back, Bianca Santoyo. Congratulations on the baby. Welcome, happy to have you back, and excited for this, instrumental, in this process as well. So I want to acknowledge that fact. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Gustavo. Bianca, would you like to share some remarks?
Yeah, sorry, I just have a little one feeding. So I did want to address that we've been working tremendously since day one, since the whole 617 got approved. And now that we are at this end of the stage, not at the end of the stage, but initiating what is the implementation phase, approving it, implementation, it's a lot of work. But I give a lot of kudos to all the residents that have stuck with us and made this possible, and not let industry just taking over all these fundings, because usually all these programs, they tend to be washed down, and residents have been participating since day one. They have not let the table go. And even though I was gone for a little bit, I was hearing in the background all the wonderful, wonderful work that they're doing behind the scenes. So I'm so proud of you guys, and I'm happy that we're towards the end of the approval, but initiating the implementation phase. Thank you.
Thank you, Bianca, and welcome back. It's so great to hear you and your little one. With that, I'd love to turn it over to Jessica for any opening remarks from their district.
I will just echo the thanks and the gratitude that Gus and Bianca shared. We are so grateful for, we threw a lot of extra meetings in there. We had a lot of learning sessions, a lot of times where it felt like there were just presentations for you and extra meetings to make sure we got all of the information. And we really appreciate a lot of the push from you all, and then certainly the community leaders who I think shared with us a lot of resident concerns, which is how we got an in-person meeting, which is how we got the participatory budgeting exercise, which is how we got these little votes. That was all the work from the folks that work with us and represent you all so well. So I will just thank you. Gus echoed everything. We at the district support everything Gus said about the vote, whether it's tonight or at a special quick vote meeting. We are happy to accommodate either one. So I will pass it back to you, Daniela, to get us started.
Wonderful. Thank you. Well, with so much gratitude for this whole process, we also just want to say, and really, we came in October, and the growth and the partnership and the level of cooperation that we've seen from the community co-leads, from the residents, from all the CSC members, and of course from the Air District, and the facilitation team. It's been lovely to see you all grow in such a positive direction, and really this is just a beginning. It feels like just a beginning in terms of what you all will be working to implement, and that we'll have the privilege to support you all in the facilitation. With that, I'm gonna move us into our next agenda item. The next item is around the Community Emissions Reduction Program document discussion. That's how it's labeled. And so first, you're gonna hear from the Air District. They're gonna go through a presentation to review the developed SERP measures. You're going to see a review of all of the measures. You're going to be able to see the latest survey results from 4 SERP measures that were still sort of pending in development and in conversation with you all. You will also get a brief review of the SERP document that you all have probably already started to look through on your own. And then you're going to get us some clarity about the next steps of the SERP. So you'll be able to hear all of that today. And the last thing, you'll have a good amount of time to hold some space for discussion on the pesticides measure. I know we got some feedback, and so we'll go through that discussion. So, I ask us all to work together to go through those discussions that we need to have to get you all to the next step. Dr. Amy Ramos.
Thank you, Daniela. Before we get into the meeting, as Daniela mentioned previously, we know that you all, the residents, qualify for the stipend program. So in an effort to ensure that we have collected proper attendance, we do have a couple inconsistencies that we'd like to verify. So Manuel, can you confirm your last name? Manuel, ¿me puede escuchar? What about Viviana? Viviana, can you hear us? Can you confirm your last name, please?
Yeah, it's Mendoza.
Thank you, Viviana. Appreciate it. And then with Señor Francisco González, is that Cecilia Flores that we see on the screen too? See? Gracias. Thank you so much. We just want to verify that we collected proper attendance so that you all get your stipend. Thank you for the interruption.
Thank you. Wonderful. We'll check in on Manuel down the line as well to see if we can confirm that. With that, I'll turn it over to the Air District to walk us through the presentation that we've got prepared for you all.
Thank you, Daniela. So I'll just quickly summarize before I share my screen because it is hard to see faces once I share the screen. As Daniela mentioned, I'm going to start by summarizing sort of what we know for a fact is in the SERP based on the presentation we shared last time. So all those big green check boxes of all the SERP measures that had majority yes votes from you all are officially in the SERP. And as Daniela mentioned, there are 4 that we sent out a survey about. So I'll review those and then I'm going to hop over to the document. So I will pause after reviewing to see if there's any questions. And then I'm going to hop over to the actual SERP document. So you'll see my screen change a couple of different times. Just want to clarify. I'm sharing my screen now and I will jump right in. And if someone from my team can just add to the chat, this is actually already posted. So if folks want to follow along in their own accord, or I skip forward and folks want to go back to a slide, it is in the screen, but it is bilingual. So hopefully everyone is able to see on my screen. We've shared this. This is probably our 4th iteration of this, and we've moved along sort of this timeline. I'm not going to spend too much time because we have a lot to get to, but this is really summarizing what Gustavo said in the beginning. There is a lot of work, a ton of meetings. Each of these was sometimes more than just one meeting. So this isn't even reflective of how many meetings we've had. Today, we are at this space, but as acknowledged, if this needs to happen at a specific separate meeting, that is okay. We want everyone to feel comfortable with taking the vote. So we're good either way. Today, we're here really to kind of get final feedback on the SERP. And that's incredible that we're almost kind of to the finish line. So this is an overview. It's similar to the overview last time. Not much has changed. It's still over $30 million that's allocated and supported by the CSC in investment for the community. It reduces nearly 700 tons of emissions in your community, and that's just from the district measures alone. Actually, with the statewide measures from the California Air Resources Board, it's over 700 tons. So something I wanted to clarify and add to it. And then here are the 4 measures. This is kind of the final step, and everything else is kind of already falling into place. So I just wanted to share sort of where we're at overall and remind you, this is all of the funding that you have all allocated and you have all helped us support and get into the final document. This seems like a lot. It is meant to be a short, comprehensive list. So if you are following here in English, this top list of both of these tables are in the SERP. Down here is the Spanish version. Everything on the left is everything besides the 4 measures we had. So the ones that all made it last meeting, this is a short summary. These are all in your SERP. We went over last time all of the exact incentives amount. The document that we sent out to you all has all of the details in here. And we're just really, really excited about kind of the different types of measures. There's measures that are heavy duty, there's measures that are for residents, and there's measures that are for community. And of course, as we also went over last meeting, there are many other measures that aren't incentives based, that focus on regulations and enforcement, that focus on partnerships, and that focus on outreach. And so I just wanted to summarize for you all. Today, we're going to focus on just 4 measures, not because we don't have, not because we only have 4, but because we already are agreed on the other measures in the SERP. So I'm going to pause here and go over the 4 measures and let you know that the pesticide measure had a lot of committee interest in modifying. And so we're going to go over that at the end of this presentation. So just to quickly share, on the kind of revote for the car share program, there was not overwhelming interest in, there was actually the majority of folks were interested in not having it in the SERP. And many of the comments, if there was an interest in not having it in the SERP was making sure that we take those incentives dollars and maybe look to make sure that they can support another measure. And so we can talk about that here in a moment, but I just wanted to, in terms of comprehensively, whether it's yes in the SERP or no, not in the SERP, just kind of give that feedback to you all. The public fleet vehicles measure did eventually have folks that were interested in moving it forward. And primarily the comments we received were from the folks that voted no. And so moving it forward, we will indeed have this amount of funding target the public fleet vehicle measure. And so we're just, again, grateful for the feedback there. I know there was a lot of discussion back and forth. And certainly, as we've promised and as we want to do with you all, as we move into implementation, as Gus and Bianca both talked about, that's where we'll work with you all on implementing this measure and getting a lot of feedback on some of the comments and concerns some of you might have had about maybe not wanting this measure in there. We can still take that feedback once we start implementation. So putting in the SERP just means we have a set aside amount of funding for public fleet vehicles, and all of the details we will ask you all for. Incentives for e-bikes is a measure that doesn't actually have SERP SERP dollars tied to it. It was 50-50, but given that it's not a SERP incentives allocation, so it doesn't take away any funding from the SERP, we were comfortable with making sure that we focus on the SERP priorities, which was many of the comments, and making sure that we just bring awareness about carbs money. So we're not going to take any SERP dollars, but we're going to kind of keep that in more as a partnership measure for making sure that we bring stuff forward. And I do see your hand, Bianca. I'm going to go to one more and then I'll take questions, which I think is a good time for questions. And then finally, pesticide measures. We had exactly 50-50 people that voted yes on as it was written, and then 18 people that had a lot of great comments, primarily about specifically more about buffer zones and notification. We have a couple of slides at the end based on some specific committee member input and comments that add to the measure that we want to review with you all. So we're comfortable, it sounds like everyone's comfortable with it being the SERP, but obviously wanted some other things added to it. So we definitely want to make sure that we talk tonight and spend a lot of time tonight about pesticides, since that was the main comment we received. So I'll pause there and take questions or comments or even input on particularly the car share program funding. And I do see Bianca's hand.
Go ahead, Bianca.
I have a concern. I know that you were mentioning like the truck fleet vehicle, even though it didn't get a lot of votes, it was still added. Now we were talking about pesticides and there was still a discussion, an open discussion. So when these SERPs are not approved and the district wants to get them into the SERP, they approve them even though the residents are iffy about it. But when we talk about pesticides, that's when it's an open discussion. That is alarming, because if residents want something and they haven't, and it's not even put as a consideration in the SERP until we have a discussion. So why are other items that are supposedly in discussion added, even though residents are not as clear as they wanted to? And
I think maybe I misspoke. We went with the majority vote. So more people voted yes than voted no. And those are the things. We were tied 50-50 on pesticides. And if you recall, Bianca, at our in-person meeting, the summary we provided at our last meeting, we were tied 50-50 with public fleet vehicles, and took that there was a lot of back and forth and a lot of comments back and forth with folks about that particular measure. And in the comments that we received, the comments summarized primarily were on the no vote, saying if it's no, let's move the funding. There weren't necessarily comments about changing the measure, although of course, if that is one of the concerns, we would have taken it. The reason I think that we put it in and we were comfortable with the yes is that it primarily had a majority yes vote.
Thank you, Jessica. Oh,
go ahead.
I see Gustavo. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I'm really struggling to find words how to explain myself and the frustration of the community about the pesticides. I think you just explained, Jessica, the public fleet, which is is 16 no's, definitely no's. But on pesticides is 18 and 18 and 0 no's.
Right.
I think the request is we wanted and we requested and
definitely. And I
think on the draft serve that you are going to share the language, it's mentioned that residents had concerns. I think the language is totally dismissing the recommendation of the steering committee members. We did not just express concerns. We made recommendations, and the language that you have in your draft is not at all reflecting the recommendations of the steering committee members. So that's very frustrating. As I mentioned, it's difficult for me just to explain, how frustrating it is to explain,
we want to open. I hear you, and we know that there's a frustration. So we are committed. The with CSC modification is really to indicate that, to your point, no one voted no. We know pesticides need to be in there, but we were not. We want to hear your feedback, and we want to change it to make sure people are comfortable. So I'm sorry if that was unclear. 100%. There seemed to be frustration in the survey as well. We have some recommended language changes that we received from committee members that we have to share on our slides here in a little bit. And we are committed to this being the main part of the discussion the rest of today once I review the other pieces of the SERP, if that's okay with you, Gustavo.
Yeah, that's okay. But just to add another thing, since we have to wait for the other one, we have in the language, there is a notification and buffer zone. There are two different recommendations, it's not one. There are two recommendations that I think the feedback from at least from the several of the residents and from the beginning, those were the two things that we wanted to be included, and none of those is included. I think some of the other languages, that the agencies are willing to talk about that after the state approves the notification. So we have to wait.
So and I hear you, and I'm wondering, Daniela, if we can, Gustavo, I want to have this conversation. We actually have some slides and some input from DPR and feedback and back and forth. Daniela, do you think we should go to that now, or do we think, and maybe I can look to Gustavo Aguirre Jr. to see if we should go through the SERP, kind of just to give people a high level overview, or kind of given that there's maybe interest in moving to pesticides, I'm happy to go straight to those slides now if folks are interested.
Gustavo, do you have a Gus Jr., do you have a preference for how we move forward?
I don't have a preference. Whatever the majority decides on, yeah, I'm happy to move forward.
Okay, Gustavo, so just to be very clear, we are coming into this meeting prepared to host as long as, we have at least 30, at the most conservative 30 minutes for the discussion on pesticides, and perhaps even longer. We wanted Gustavo to show you have the discussion about these measures except for the pesticides, and then we were going to show you some more information regarding the SERP document, just give you that overview. That way we could have the rest of the time for the pesticide discussion. So are you in agreement to kind of go with our proposed process, or would you like to, if you feel strongly, we can go to the pesticide discussion, and if you want to pose it to the rest of the CSC to see if that's important to address at this moment, or if we can proceed with the plan that we came in with.
I just want to be sure that I think this will be the fifth time that we are going to be talking about pesticides. And I just want to be sure, if you dismiss the steering committee members' recommendations, well, that's another thing, but it will be the fifth time. And I just want to be sure that we have the time to do that. And because it's, we may add another component to the agreements saying that the recommendations as proposed, the majority, the voting rule that we have should be obeyed, because it looks like it's not happening.
And yeah, and again, maybe I'll just reiterate, and I'm happy, maybe this sounds like it's a good time to jump right into the pesticides, so I'm happy to do so. And I'll just start with, this was not an intention that we're with CSC modification was maybe just framed incorrectly. And I should have just really, the intention is, we heard that there needs to be changes. We are not going to put something in the SERP and unless we review it all with you and get that feedback. And there have been changes since you've all seen the SERP based on comments we received the past few days. And we also have DPR on the line here with us today to help kind of talk through that as well. So I'm happy. It sounds like we're ready to start jumping into the pesticides discussion. Bianca, is yours related to pesticides? Because I'd like to kind of maybe start framing it first, or is yours separate?
Well, like I'm still concerned on the public fleet, and I wanted to, if it's a 50%, no, it's a 50%. Or yes, or if it's a no, move the funding. In that case, can that money be allocated for the pesticide measures? I know pesticide is one of the biggest concerns, and there's no money at the moment. I don't see any money allocated for that funding, for that SERP measure. And in those cases, can there be money moved? Another question that I do remember in the last meeting, we were talking about incentives for the e-bikes. There's other programs out there, community programs that do offer a kind of like a 50-50 share. You put 50 and then we put 50. Has the Air District reached out to those programs that offer those e-bikes for the communities?
We've started, yes. And so I guess I'll answer both of those questions. The first, I think your question is about moving funding. I think maybe you meant the car share program, which is one that's not in there. The public fleet vehicles is yes in the SERP, and that percent is the majority of folks voted yes. But to that point, the 250, can it be moved to pesticides was your first question. Maybe I'll defer, and as we discuss pesticides, kind of defer to DPR on whether or not funding is a piece of the puzzle. I think in our original discussions, I'm not sure if the incentive piece was part of that discussion, but I hear you, and I think it sounds like that's a suggestion from you. And then your other discussion about incentives for e-bikes, yes, a lot of our actual intention for e-bikes is to partner with other opportunities and other programs. The way that it was worded in the survey, in the SERP, both of those, and in the handouts that we gave out a couple of months ago, was that it would always be a partnership. However, as we move forward, and folks that are involved in other groups know this, say as we implement the SERP and we identify e-bikes, and as we move forward, folks say, you know what, actually we do want to add funding to this. We've found that as CARB launched their program, we want to take advantage and we want to move for more funding. That is a conversation we are starting to have with other CSCs about moving and adding funding, and we're happy, especially if it's a SERP measure about partnerships. It's an easy one to say, you know what, let's fund this SERP measure. It's already in here, let's move it forward. And so we're happy to support that and move that forward. And so, yeah, I was gonna jump, but I see Jesus Alonso. I'd like to start with pesticides. And Jesus, if your questions is not about pesticides, I'll take it, but otherwise maybe I'll jump to that slide so we can have more context.
Yeah, it's just a quick question on the public fleet. For the in-person meeting, wasn't the vote majority no? First question. Or was it tied?
It was tied.
Okay.
Exactly. So that's why we wanted to, that was the exact reason we had to put it back in the survey and do another vote, just to kind of get more feedback from folks.
And then my other question is, for the yes with changes, were the changes added to the SERP?
The changes are that's what we will review right now. So if we as a committee don't like the changes, we can continue to add that and make those amends. And just to let you know, that is why the co-leads asked that we potentially look to take the vote on June 6th. That way, if tonight we discuss changes, we can get a different version out to you all Friday, and you have a week plus to review and make a final decision before June 6th.
Okay, yeah, because I was thinking like if those changes were not added, then those 4 would go to the no, right?
If those, right, exactly. So, well, it's possible. Now, those changes, it depends on the comments that we received from folks. If changes from those comments, none of them had like specific changes other than saying if it's no, move the funding. So it wasn't like a let's make some changes. But to your point, all of anything that we received in comments, we tried to incorporate, and pesticides is the main one that we want to review right now with that.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Jessica, just in this same spirit of just so that people get clarity, you know, there was this survey that was voted upon to see where the percentage was in terms of the support level. So with pesticides, can the CSC anticipate the same kind of process where you'll talk today, you'll get comments, and then are you doing another survey just on pesticides, or your support is going to be based on the discussion today?
I think based on the discussion today, we will make a final recommendation in the final version of the SERP so that folks have the final SERP before them on, you know, and can sit with it for some time before taking a final vote, should we take one in the future. That said, though, if for some reason folks wanted to vote today and felt like we came to an agreement today, that's also possible. But if we had to amend language, obviously we can't do that, you know, on the fly. So we would have to, you know, say, you know, we vote today with XYZ language. It does make it a little bit easier if we do vote on June 6th. That allows us to send out to you all a final version with the language that we've all sort of come to a consensus on.
Thank you. And I don't see any other hands raised. Oh, Bianca, go ahead.
I wanted to address this kind of comment that Richard Corey did in chapter. And Richard is from CARB. He stated whatever community wants is going to be added to the SERP. We as state agency, community agency, we're going to be responsible of making anything possible. That is his comment coming straight from CARB and directed from the AB 617 process. If we can't fix this issue, that means that this 617 is going to go down the drain. We really want to make it clear that whatever comes out, we want the state agency, the local agency, whoever is responsible to take responsibility of this issue, because this is something that residents have been bringing it up constantly in every single meeting. And if we're not addressing it how every point residents would want, then we can't approve anything that residents are bringing up as a concern. So I wanted to give that comment in and make sure that residents know that this is their platform. And if you guys are not comfortable, we don't have to vote for it now.
Thank you, Bianca.
And I'm wondering, Jessica, to give that momentum, Bianca, because that's so very important to ensure that you all see your thoughts and insights and all of your recommendations represented in the SERP. Maybe you could just, before you go into the pesticides, just remind us of the fact that the document that was sent out is lengthy. It's a government document. It has a lot of details, but remind us that what is currently in there is what folks have voted on. And these 4 measures that we're talking about today are the ones that we don't have consensus on. Hence, to Gustavo's point, why we're going to review the pesticide measure in great detail. Exactly. I know it would be helpful just to provide some clarity. I'm feeling like there's some folks that are a little bit lost in what we have agreed on and what we haven't yet.
I agree. And I think that's clear. And thank you, Dr. Ramos. That is exactly right. The pesticide measure as it stands in the SERP right now is not officially in the SERP because you all have not agreed on that language. So I agree, that's clear. To Bianca's point, we want all of that feedback. We want all of that input. I know you've all had a chance. I'm going to just pop over really quickly to the SERP because the slides I have right here are it's a table that's within the SERP, but there are a couple of context pieces to these slides that were added to that pesticides measure that I think are important. So I'm just going to pop over. I'm going to high level review those if you'll give me a moment. I'll pop back into this and kind of frame where we're at, some of the specific additions to this table we received, and then maybe from there, if that's okay with everyone, then go into the discussion. So over into the SERP, and just for those that are following along in the like on your printed out versions, we are in chapter 4, which for those that have had a chance to review, that is where all of the measures are. And within the partnership measures, so agency partnerships, one of the main ones is pesticides in the community. We have received comments just generally, and Gustavo is one of them, and a few others are part of this group, that just say, hey, look, let's make sure that there's a clear indication of what the responsibilities are, whose jurisdiction it is to control pesticides. So that was just some comments that have not made it into this latest version, but that are just background information about the partnership. And then I'm going to draw your attention to a couple of things, and I'll go back to the slide that's bilingual, but this is in the translated version. So we're in the measure 5A about pesticides in the community. And I think what I heard from Gustavo is that we characterized this piece incorrectly, Gustavo. We say here that community members had concerns related, and what you would like it, or you definitely are saying those weren't just concerns, they were asks, they were part of the community's recommendations. I think that is an important distinction, and we certainly should make that here. So I'm committing, and it's recorded, and I'm going to have my team take notes that is a change we need to make, is that the community members had recommendations for measures related to, and then of course notification and application buffers are two main components to that. So I think that's important because it really goes to the asks and the several iterations of questions we've had from community. I'm going to skip this table, it's in the slides, so that I can show you in a bilingual version, and go to this piece down here that was also added per our meeting. If you recall, we had Lorelei Oviat, who represents Kern County on our CSC, mentioned that the county will take an item, and we have a slide about this, to their board about all of the county related commitments in the SERP, including this particular measure. Anything in here that relates to the county, including this paragraph about engaging the steering committee. When we talk about mitigation practices, this refers to the mitigation practices, including application buffers, which are the ask of, the concern, not just concerns, but ask and recommendation from the community, as well as the notification system. So I'm just going to pause there. I'm going to flip back to my slides and then just remind folks, and this is just something to keep in mind, and it's something that's important because there are so many agencies as a part of this, and we've learned this throughout all of the meetings, and we bring all these different partners. A couple of things. One is that we've mentioned a couple of times, and it's why we bring our partner agencies here, is that in terms of the commitments, we need our partner agencies to commit to those commitments for them to be actual commitments in the SERP. But that doesn't mean we can't clarify what the asks from the community are. So we will change that. We will make sure it was a recommendation and an ask, and a lot of support from the community for those changes. So we'll make that change. Related to this table, and I do see some questions before I get into this, this first table is what was in the handout we sent you. And then I have a table with 2 extra additions that were submitted by folks that I would like to share with you if I can get a moment. But I do see some questions. I'm happy to pause and take those. And I do see Gustavo put his hand down, but I do see Oron, unless Gustavo, you still had a question.
We can go with Odon, and then we'll go to Gustavo. Go ahead, Odon.
Sí, yo nada más, pues, Yo nomás quería comentar porque yo quise entrar desde un principio, bueno, igual también el código de acceso no me dejaba entrar, estuve de las 5 esperando, entrando, ok, pero igual también, como decía, es que como dijo en un principio, nuestras cosas, bueno, como comunidad, nosotros sabemos en cuestión de pesticidas cuáles son las cosas que nosotros queremos para nosotros, como comunidad. Entonces, si ustedes a veces no entienden o se ponen a pensar en que nosotros, como comunidad, nosotros somos los que nosotros queremos, lo que nosotros queremos, entonces ahí no estamos conectados en el mismo canal. Nomás quiero saber si es usted en cuestión de pesticidas, nosotros queremos notificaciones, queremos muchas cosas, pero que no queremos que ustedes malentiendan lo que nosotros queremos para nosotros como comunidad. Gracias.
Thank you, Alon.
And I'll go and once we start digging into this, I agree. We definitely want to make sure we're not misunderstanding. There is going to be, though, at some point, even though I think, fully understand the ask, although it's possible we don't, so please help us clarify. There is, with the agency work and sort of with what each agency can commit to with our partners and with kind of all of the work that's kind of going on, especially with our state partners and even our local partners. I think at this point, there's a little bit of kind of give and take, and we're trying, I think, to implement as much as we possibly can. We collectively, all the agency partners, as much as we possibly can of the asks and the strong recommendations from community members. And so I hope that's reflected in this. And like I said, we have our partners here to help kind of clarify kind of the asks and sort of what the recommendations were from the partners. So I'll go to Gustavo next.
Yes, I want to refer back to when you were saying, Jessica, referring to the county presenting. If you can go back maybe to the prior slide, I think it was the last paragraph after the table. The way I understand it, I think it says, that the agencies are willing to talk about, the pesticides. I'm just paraphrasing. After the state approves the notification. So that's where I'm coming from when I made my earlier comment, The top is, we raised some concerns. We didn't raise concerns. We made specific recommendations. And here it says that we shall keep quiet until the state finish their process in notification. And those are the things that I think we said, these are the two things we understand, we had a lot of conversations about the state notification, but it was also raised, about the buffer zones that we don't see any reason why not to start conversations on that, it's just, it's difficult, we just, at the beginning, we just reflect a little bit of those kids that lost their lives by one person. And here on pesticides, which is one of the biggest polluter, one of the biggest contributor to cancer for kids, asthma, and all of that, is another way of killing kids and adults. But talking about kids, this is another way of killing the kids, damaging their health. Do we want to do something to protect the kids other ways? Yes or no? Not only the guns are killing the kids, our actions are killing the kids, and it's in our hands to reduce that risk for kids. And the voting was not 18-18. Voting was 36-0. It is 0 no pesticides. It's 18 as it was presented, 18 improving it, but it's 0 people voted pesticides are not important.
Yes.
So I think, and we understand that, it will require conversations and all of that, but as also mentioned, you know, other countries have better buffer zones. There are things that we can do. We're not saying, you know, wipe out agriculture. I mentioned that in the past.
Mm-hmm.
But I know we can do better, you know, and I know we can let the ag industry do their business, but I know that we can find ways to protect, better protect the health of our communities. And it's proven. We have an agreement with Recology, one of the companies here in the boundaries,
Mm-hmm.
which the prior company, they were very, very bad neighbors, and this company is doing way better. And it came up out of a result of conversations with community and the company. Why cannot we do this kind of things here with 617? My frustration is we have an opportunity. We have the agencies. We have the community organized. We have the community engaged. And if we don't have these conversations, we are going to lose the opportunity to protect the health of our community. And I think we should keep in our minds, if we don't do that, if we feel bad about those kids that lost their lives, do we want to contribute in killing kids maybe slower by cause of cancer and all of that because of pesticides? How else can I make my statement to get important? I understand that, and you know, Cuba is a dictatorship country. We are in a democratic country. Why one person is preventing these kind of conversations? So this is very, very important for the communities. You need to pay attention. You need to work with us. That's all we are asking. You, the agencies, need to work with us. Even Lorelei, in which I think she knows that sometimes my organization and her, we're not in the same page. In this one, we are in the same page. She's open to, you know, from the county to have those conversations, not the ag commissioner, but she's kind of recommending to have these conversations. We are not asking at this moment, this is the, you know, leave it or take it or leave it. We are saying we need to have those conversations to look for those options. I don't think it's unrealistic what we are asking. It's not unrealistic. And we have this opportunity. And I think we need to really, really consider that and keep in our minds. It is hurting us having those kids losing their lives. We want to contribute killing kids, the kids with more pesticides, not only pesticides, this is one contributor. You know, we are trying to reduce, you know, the cumulative impacts of the pollution, but pesticides is one, you know, and I'm, even if it's not directly related or under the control of their district or CARB, there are opportunities to do that. And the other thing is, even if the state comes up with good notification, that will not resolve each and every issue with pesticides. Long term, I know there are conversations, you know, looking for better ways for the industry to keep doing their business and have, you know, less risky chemicals and pesticides. I know those conversations are happening, but that's slow. You know, changing that is slow. But meantime, we can look for those options. That's all we are asking. You know, we want to have the conversation, and I'm convinced all my life I've been working, you know, with growers, with the union and with the communities and dealing with agencies and companies. And when there is will, we can find ways to benefit everybody. Me personally, that's why I'm very concerned that and frustrated that looks like, you know, seeing and my frustration are based on the draft language, because I just reviewed the language before the meeting, and that's what I was reading. You know, I really feel that we are not being respected, you know, as steering committee members. You know, it's you agencies really need to consider, because as Bianca mentioned, if it's not working for communities, why having 617 project? If it's not working, go back to the, you know, status quo and let the agencies get the money and do the work. Why you are using the time of so many people? how many people have here? 52 people, some residents, some agencies. If we don't take action and do the right thing, we are wasting the taxes, the money taxes of all Californians. I think it's for each of us, it's a responsibility to be, to act in a responsible way to do that, because we are expected to improve. I think that's all the community is asking, giving us the opportunity to explore those options, which we are completely convinced that there are ways to do it, without killing the ag or the other industries. There are ways to improve. Sorry.
No, don't be sorry. I think that was well iterated, and I think it just shows, as you mentioned earlier, Gustavo, that this is not the first time we're talking about pesticides, right? And we've heard this, and we've worked, I think, as you characterized really well, as best as we think we can on interagency to interagency. And I hear to you, it's not rising to the expectations that, the community has for us. And so one of the things, I'll just kind of iterate, I hope, not that I don't want to disregard pesticides, but I hope that we all feel that for every other aspect that we've worked together to bring the funding, the community input, and support many, many other great measures in the SERP, that you all feel heard in that regard, and not to separate the two, but just for a moment to reflect on all of that. And we've been trying to evolve and to support that. So moving to the pesticides piece, I'm going to bring, we do have DPR here, and I'll kick it over to Min in a second. One of the things that in particular in that piece, Gustavo, and in working with our county partners and their commitment, we included this based on a commitment from the county, as you know, and as we've iterated, and I know this isn't, I feel like we're all frustrated with this particular answer, but each county or each agency has a specific jurisdiction over these types of things. And Lorelei, as you've committed, or as you've mentioned, has committed to bringing this to her board and has an opportunity to take this, and perhaps this language in particular isn't exactly the language, and but take this language or whatever kind of the final language is to her board, to have you all attend and support and advocate for. So I think, that's what I'll just say about why it ended up the way it did in terms of working with partner agencies and making sure the language is something that they felt they could commit to. And I'll kind of kick it really quickly over to Min if I can.
If you can give me a few more seconds, I just want to express that it's not only my frustration, because we have meetings with the residents, and I'm expressing my frustration, but also speaking on behalf of, most of the steering committee members, which we meet and talk about it. So I'm just reflecting not only my frustration, but the frustration of the community.
I hear you.
And just the other one more point is, if 617 is not the place to talk about buffer zones, we may consider taking it countywide to do it. This is not the only option that community have to advocate to protect ourselves from pesticides. So
something I'll just say kind of on behalf is we, and you all know this from those that are involved in other communities, there is always, the door is always open for all discussions in implementation. So frustration with the commitments, although we're going to keep working, I'm not trying to dismiss the work that we're going to do right now. We'll keep working to amend whatever language that we can in partnership with the other agencies. But into implementation, that doesn't mean we can't keep having community members talk about buffer zones and keep working with us and keep talking about things. So I hear you, and definitely want to pass it over to DPR just to talk about the commitments. And if I can share, we did have 2 additional, what we think is really great additions about enforcement and about communication about enforcement actions that I think you guys hopefully might be really interested in hearing, that were committee member suggestions that I'd like to share. So maybe I'll pass it to Min, I'll share those and then go back to the discussion just so that we have time to share those new additions.
Excuse me.
Jessica, oh, sorry.
No,
I got pass them in.
Bianca, her hands was up for a while, so I don't know if you want her to ask first or.
Yeah, we can take your comment, Bianca.
Yes, I wanted to address this topic. Kern County has been the first county to implement what is considered the buffer zone that we already have in place. We're the county that has started projects that benefits growers' pockets, but not protect the community's health. For the buffer zones, Gustavo was part of the whole process and started in Tulare, and it grew all the way to Kern County. So the process is already there. There's ways to do it. There's ways the state could enforce it. For the notification, there's a notification that is excellent. It's excellent. It's a grower to grower notification. It's adjacent to whatever other grower notification. So for the Kern County Ag Commissioner to dismiss this comments are horrible because he already has it implemented in his county. He actually created the grower to grower notification. The state is looking for the grower to grower notification because that is the most accurate information that we have out there for notification. But for him to refuse it, to make it for residents to view it, it's concerning. So what does it mean? That you are trying to protect the growers' pockets, but not residents' health, not our children's health? These are concerning because our health should be number one throughout this whole process. This AB 617 is to clean air, to clean polluters, and for one individual not addressing it and not wanting to make it implemented in the AB 617, even though he's been in every single meeting, he has not missed any meeting, so he cannot say that he hasn't heard anything about it. He's been there since day one, even in chapter. We want him to address it and to implement it in his county. And also, DPR has some authority over the Ag Commissioner, and we're still going back and forth, wanting the state agency to take in charge of that, because we want this to happen. We want it as it's stating right now. We want the notification to be more accurate than what the state is going to happen. If we wait until the statewide notification, we are way off. It's going to be implemented in 2024. From 2024, we don't even know how many people are going to be dying from cancer, asthma attacks, allergies, you can name it, all the respiratory problems. We're still way off. And we want it to happen now, because our next phase is implementation phase. And if we don't have it in there, then we're not going to address it for the implementation part.
Before I kick it to you, Min, because I'm going to have a question for you and something I'm just going to quickly add and clarify, and then if you can clarify a timeline for me. The language here, in particular, that Gustavo and residents that work with Gustavo are particularly concerned about, is the when DPR has developed a recommendation. This is, from my reading of this is a recommendation, not officially adopted. So meaning that I believe it's going to be much sooner than 2024, that there might be a proposed recommendation from a statewide notification. So Min, can you talk a little bit about when a recommendation will be set out for the notifications, and then maybe a little bit to address some of the other comments?
Yeah, sure. So thank you for having me here, and I hear everybody's concerns, and it's been a long conversation that we've had together, so I'm no stranger to a lot of the things that has been brought up here in some other communities. So I appreciate having the opportunity to just have the honest feedback back and forth. I will say that AB 617 has given us the opportunity to be here to actually engage with not only residents, but everybody from all walks of life, to kind of hear from more of a localized community on their concerns. To speak a little bit about the notification, so the recommendation is that you're correct. So I will advocate, I will kind of push back a little bit on some of the things that are being said. The statewide notification, I think was essentially spearheaded from a lot of work from other AB 617 communities and the ask from that. So AB 617 in and of itself as a whole program, I think, has been instrumental in kind of moving the bar across the board for different agencies. Just for us to have this conversation for all these other agencies that initially were not part of the conversation to be here, I think is fundamentally like an improvement. So with that being said, I'm going to drop the link, and I think this is typically the link that I give for the notification. A couple of key things that I would like to put to let everybody know. There's a couple of public workshops that I would advocate for you guys to join. There's information on there. I think it's in the how do I engage drop down. Within that, I think there's 3 coming up. I think it starts in June 27, 28, 29. So there's work groups that essentially they would like to get feedback. At this point, there's been 3 out of the 4 counties that have started up the notification process. So, and those are open to anybody to join. You don't have to live in the county to join and see how the system comes about. And I think this is kind of where I have been advocating for your engagement. I think it's just because it's not here in Arvin, Lamont, and I understand the frustration of it not being specific to your region, doesn't mean that you don't have a voice in giving feedback to what essentially is a benefit to all of Californians. I think it's a good opportunity for you to voice what you need. And in that forum, make this process into something that would not only help yourselves, but help everybody in the state. And the reason why we do this is because we need it to be a permanent fix. I think a lot of the talk sometimes is you would like to spin up a localized notification. There's no guarantee that DPR can make that permanent. The nature of a pilot project is the fact that it goes away after X number of months. So, like the pilots look into certain different things, and even within our pilots now for the notification system, each county is looking into different aspects of how this whole statewide system is going to be implemented. So it's actually a lot more complex, and that's why we had to compartmentalize it and spread it amongst the group. And I think I'll agree with Bianca in the sense that Kern County has been on the forefront of a lot of this work. Like she mentioned, they were on the forefront of grower to grower notification, which actually is to benefit workers, agricultural workers who are on the field or on adjacent fields. So they're like essentially the closest person to anything. So I will push back a little bit on that, because Kern County has been really good about how they work to protect growers throughout the county. And they are actually heavily involved in any kind of complaints that come in there. I work with that staff quite a bit. So I do know that they do take every inquiry very seriously. So, but yeah, like again, going back to the notification, the statewide system, there's the public workshops that I advise you to engage in. After that, there's also going to be some more, once the pilots wrap up in, I want to say like a month or so, they're going to basically take all the lessons learned, aggregate it, and then have some conversation with everybody and kind of and make it go into a public comment period. Again, this is going to be a full statewide regulation, so there's going to be ample opportunities in that process where not only residents can be engaged, but if a grower wants to have something said, it's open to everybody. So that's how we do things within the state. It has to be public, has to be engaging, not only for the growers, applicators, companies, well, whoever. We have to hear everybody's voice, and we have to make it work statewide. So yeah, I think that's the main things I wanted to touch on as far as that the notification process. But yeah, there's quite a bit. Like the intent for me is to continue to come back here and kind of give everybody an update on where we are in the process, things that are coming up, and opportunities for people to engage. And I think that's the biggest thing. Like I've been pretty vocal about having y'all engage and get whatever input or feedback into a public forum, and help our process to make the system work as best we can.
And then just really quickly, just can you, I know that we were, in terms of timeline, you shared last time that there's intent to have a final rulemaking in place by the beginning of 2024. So that'd be January 2024, meaning there would be a recommendation ahead of that.
Yes. So yeah, the recommendation will essentially become so this is going to be poorly worded because we all use similar words. The rule has to be noticed. So when the rule becomes publicly noticed, that's when you'll essentially, you can treat that as a recommendation. That's going to be the language that's going to come out. That's going to be essentially step by step, who's involved, what's required, who's required to do what, and all that good stuff. So I think when we're talking about recommendation, I think that's the parallel that I think is what you're asking me.
And when does that happen before the final typically?
I think they're scheduled to notice at the end of the year or like in the fall. I don't know what that looks like because they're obviously the pilots took a little bit of time to spin up, and then there's going to be having to wrap all that the information and get the feedback from that. They have to do a couple of public comment workshops, and I'm unsure on if they're going to do another focus group. Unfortunately, I'm not tied into this group as much as I should as I'd like to be, but I believe there's some more focus group things to kind of flesh out some details.
So just to summarize, so when I mentioned earlier that Kern County, that piece that Kern County is going to take to their board about coming up with local, once there's a recommendation, it's possible that there comes, in your terms, Min, a notice, meaning like it's like almost like a draft of the rule. You said possibly just by the end of this year?
Yeah, I think again, as you get more engaged in these public work groups, the more information will come out because I think they're going to give status updates on different where people are in their notification process. So I can't speak for what has been inputted in.
Timing.
Yeah, so one of the things I want to kind of just put in the forefront is like the statewide notification has heavy momentum behind it, and it's on track to be issued one way or another. We're going to go out with it. My fear is a little bit if we do in parallel local notification, it actually might end up coming after the state, or depending on where we are in the process, the timelines may not match up. So once I don't know, but it's going to really depend on the community here. What the ask is on what the notification will encompass, all the ins and outs of it. Like it's whether or not we can get people on board. There's a lot of different things that go into it, and I fear that timeline wise, it's not that I'm dismissing the local notification. I just think that when you have a train going down, you kind of either hop on the train or you get out of the way on this one, unfortunately. So, but again, opportunities are there for the residents to be involved and heavily be a driving force in a lot of the actions here. So I really encourage you guys to join, join all the notification systems and kind of see what's being done and provide input.
I was just going to say, I have the 2 additional recommendations, but I did see Gustavo's hand go up. So Daniela, I'll pass it to you to facilitate.
Great, thank you. Go ahead, Gustavo. And we're not able to hear your audio come through yet. No, something's going on because it says you're unmuted. No. I'm not sure if you changed anything on your audio settings, but I would click the menu option to just test your audio. You can go to audio settings.
Can't hear you still.
Gustavo, you can hear us though?
Yes.
Yes. Okay, there you go. Go ahead.
Okay, great. Okay. I think my comment is about the state notification. I think my inclination is to agree with Ming on the state process. And I frankly, I think I have the same concern that if we start another notification current, it may not be too supportive of the state process. And that's my personal, I didn't have this conversation with the rest of the steering committee members. It's just me. But I think the buffer zone is another one, but just for the language on the draft. So the recommendation from DPR is to participate now, just mention, encouraging us to participate. But the language in your draft, that it says that we will talk about it after the recommendation, So are you encouraging us to participate, or are you encouraging us to keep quiet? Because I think you're sending 2 signals there.
And I think, and can I clarify, because I think we're talking about 2 different pieces of the language. One piece is a Kern County separate paragraph. The other is a table that is definitely encouraging, per Min's encouragement, that talks specifically about engaging the CSC, regular updates, and maybe I can share my screen right now and share that. This is what was in the draft that you have reviewed that's been sent out to everyone. This table, I'm just going to share it here because this isn't the cert, but right here I have it in English and in Spanish. So hopefully folks can see. I know it's kind of small. This right here is exactly that commitment from DPR. Regular updates, timeline, providing opportunities for engagement and feedback, including mitigation projects, and mitigation includes setbacks and any other types of projects that DPR. So this is 100% a commitment from DPR, not once they have a recommendation. This is starting now. Actually, hopefully you all got an email from us from DPR today about those workshops he sent out today. So totally separate. And I think, Gustavo, to your point, will clarify, and maybe it needs to be a little clearer in the language. This is in the table. I'm now back to the SERP. This, what I just pointed out, is here in the table. It was here last time. It is separate. This is just the Kern County additional piece. So this is an addition. This is what Kern County is going to take to their board. But separate from whether Kern County votes yes or no on this, or however they support it, DPR is still committed to the engagement, to the statewide notification, to the tell me how it should work, all of that.
Yeah, I think unless I'm wrong, but I don't think we are recommending, what is already in the table and what it was already proposed. We are not opposing to all of that, at least that I'm aware. What we, I think the problem is being that the other two recommendations. I think the rest of the things that are there, we believe that those can help, and we are willing to participate on that. But just the language is confusing, and if you didn't mean to do that, that's one thing. But I think maybe one way of trying to get in the same page, maybe separating, as I mentioned earlier, the notification and the buffer zones. So we can try to clarify one at a time and try to come up with an understanding on that, because the language on the draft is very confusing, and I think that needs to be clarified.
So to your point, right here, we say including mitigation, it's all kind of combined in one, and it's not very clear. We'll make a separate commitment to have DPR come back and engage on any mitigation in a separate thing, which of course we know mitigation can include buffer zones or different types of application processes, all of that. So we'll make that separate.
Yeah, but I think just to be clear, I think my understanding is that the county needs to have a key role talking about buffer zones countywide or 617 map. I think the ag commissioners have the jurisdiction on that. DPR can support it. DPR can say, yes, you can do it, or no, you are not allowed to do that. But I think it takes the will of the county ag commissioner's office to be open to have that conversation. And that was that I was referring earlier, But I think separating those two things may help us better understand, because that language is very confusing, and that's frankly when I was reading those paragraphs, one on the top and this one. It sent me back to my time negotiating on behalf of farm workers, that one or two words killed the rest of the good expression. It's
we definitely don't want that. I totally hear you. And I'm wondering too, to your point here for the Kern County piece, maybe it's part of the table and we make it two lines. One is different. One is about notification and one is about mitigation. And that way it's separate, they're clear. And like you said, we'll separate up here too. Maybe it's too much in one and it's kind of convoluted here.
Yeah, because I think the language below is it's even, if and I don't know, I'm not totally clear, what you mean with, there, that paragraph, because if this, so the idea is and we are going to participate and actually, with the workshops already planned for that, my recommendation will be, if possible, for this, steering committee to have recommendations for the notification. I think we'll have the opportunity to do that, and maybe in following meetings we can come up with recommendations that what to be included in that notification. So that's happening. And I think if, I don't know how else we can, and if the Ag Commissioner is here and wants to participate, I think the Ag Commissioner's office can make, provide their input on this one. So,
Yeah,
because I think if organizations, we are providing input, outside of the 617. 617 is another opportunity for us to make comments on the notification process. I don't know what else can we do in terms of a state notification other than 617 and what we are doing with the county. I think the county can support us, on 617, the recommendations that we will come up with. That's one thing. I think the other thing that the Ag Commissioner have direct jurisdiction is on the buffer zones. And that may be another topic, is the Agricultural Commissioner's office willing to have those conversations, is open to do that or not. And if he say not, well, we need to look for other opportunities. But, as I mentioned, it will be very, very bad that we have this collective opportunity to do something good.
So I'm going to summarize a couple of the commitments I've made so that other folks can hold me accountable. One is to make sure it's clear and separate the commitments that have to do with buffer zones versus, mitigation practices, buffer zones included, versus the notification, and make it clear that this is a full commitment, that this, although in other ways we have to have, county support, this is a commitment through DPR no matter what. And so I think, to Gustavo's point, we'll make that very, very clear. We will also separate in the document, that other paragraph that talks about Kern County, will separate kind of the two commitments, because it is sort of in one sentence, and just make sure it's very clear. And then, so I can just remind us all of the process. That piece is the piece that Lorelei committed to you all, and we as a district are committed to getting you information about, to take to the board, for you all to go to the board and express, I think it sounds like what Gustavo is hearing from you all in the pushing for these commitments from the Kern County Board of Supervisors, which I know is, in coordination and over the Ag Commissioner's office, the planning office, and all the other components for the county. So we are committed to getting you information about that meeting. We have a commitment from our last meeting from Lorelei to get that to the board on June 14th. So we'll get you all that information. If I can, I know Jose has his hand up. I would like to just so I have a moment to share, because I know we're running up a little bit on time, I'm going to briefly summarize the other two commitments, because I think they're hitting at a lot of concerns folks have. And then I'm happy to take Jose's question, if that's okay with you, Jose. It's really brief. Thank you. Thank you. So these are two suggestions that were sent to the district. And they're about two more engagement opportunities that are related to pesticide application. One in particular is about ongoing sustainable pest management, which is kind of essentially an alternative to applying pesticides. And the actions that are outlined here were directly submitted to us from a committee member, and would really have us working, of course, with DPR, but and any other partner agency that's related to this effort, on kind of talking about how to educate growers on not using pesticides. That's an important key aspect of pesticide use, is making sure if needed or if possible to eliminate. And then the second is engaging with the CSC on ongoing statewide regulatory and pesticide, this is the wrong one. This might have been copied incorrectly. So let me go back to the actual here, just so I'm capturing it, because that's actually not correct. And we'll get that corrected in this. And so I'm going to read these out loud, because I don't have the translated version in front of me. The other one, of course, that's in there, but that was a repeat slide. It is to provide clear steps and process on how to report illegal application. Essentially, this is enforcement and complaints. So partnering with DPR and understanding how there's an education process on how they handle illegal application, should they see it, how there's engagement opportunities to provide feedback on current enforcement mechanisms, and update the CSC on any complaint reports. So this was a recommendation from community members to add to the SERP to work with DPR on the enforcement piece, which we all know is a piece of pesticide application as well. And so we just wanted to hear general feedback on including these two additions to the SERP. Although they're not directly related to the great conversation we're having about notification, they are related to Gustavo's earlier comment about just making sure pesticides aren't harming community. And so that was kind of our goal with incorporating these great suggestions. So I'll pause there. I know Jose has a question, and I'm happy to pull up the Spanish version of this, which I do have in a document.
Yes, thank you. I agree with those two additional suggestions. I think that's great. And then just a couple questions to clarify. Where it says furthermore, Kern County and these agencies, does that carry the same weight of commitment as the other ones that are included in the table, or is it included there because there wasn't enough room in the chart?
It was included because it was separate from the agencies that had a direct commitment based on that commitment from Lorelei to take it to the board. So from my understanding, the Board of Supervisors will either support that piece or not support it. If they support it, it is a commitment, and they will submit a letter to the district that we will then include, we will share with you all and include with CARB as to the level of support the Board of Supervisors has for that commitment.
Okay, and then does the language as currently written with the suggestions brought up in this meeting and that you're going to work on allow for room to work with the county to implement buffer zones locally at a stricter notification system beyond what DPR may in the future provide? Does it allow for that?
It can. It's open enough to allow for that. I think that's the feedback that the Kern County Board of Supervisors would hear and get feedback on in their piece of the commitment. Right now, it just says that we will engage, or that the Kern County will engage with the partner agencies and the committee regarding expanding mitigation practices. So taking expanding sounds like it's beyond what's currently happening. But that would be an implementation kind of piece that I think would be part of that ongoing engagement. So to your point, it is open. It does not close off that possibility, I would say.
Oh, okay, thank you for clarifying that. I think from what I'm hearing from the committee, as well as the discussion last time and kind of how the votes were structured with the 18 and 18 with the current and the modifications, is that the committee would want that possibility of having stricter notifications, greater buffer zones, and if the committee agrees, to have a much firmer commitment on behalf of this committee and through the SERP, language that clarifies that we want that to happen, not necessarily just leaving it open, but as a clear commitment that this committee wants to pursue that regardless or not the Board of Supervisors at this time is open to it, because members of the board change, public sentiment changes. And I think that even if they decide to not agree with this now, I think that having it as a clear language that it currently already is, that the CSC through the SERP wants to have stricter notifications and greater buffer zones. That's something that I'd support, and I think that that's what the sentiment of the committee here would support. So don't know how everybody else feels about that.
And to your point, and that's something that I mentioned to Gustavo at the top of his comments, we will include and recharacterize the ask for buffer zones and for notification to be an ask and not a concern. That is something that we will make clear that was a recommendation from the committee. That way, to your point, it can still be a point of discussion. The piece about Kern County's involvement, it is up to the county, because of their commitment to take it to their board, to support the SERP as written. I think that's where, to your point, there could be input, and the county can, in their comments, make specific additional recommendations. But at this At this time, I hear you and I agree. And I think what Gustavo said, I think characterizes it well, is that from the onset, it needs to be clear that it wasn't a concern, but more of an ask. And if we put that in there, it can always, and we are always committed, and Min is always committed. And I know the county, everyone will be at the table to continue to have these discussions, especially to your point, if we can point to the SERP and say, this was a recommendation. And just to be clear, I know I didn't get a chance to review the full SERP. We have also added, this is just FYI, we have also added a section to the SERP that lists other recommendations, even just to notice that they were there, even if they were voted no, just so that folks can understand what recommendations were made and what the final like support or not support was. And so I just want everyone to know that that is our commitment, is to make sure that it was clear what the community asked for, even if it was a minority and it didn't make it in. So that's our commitment.
Thank you. If that's what the final SERP does include, as you indicate, then that's something that I'm willing to support. Thank you.
Thank you, Jose. I appreciate it.
Thank you all. We can go to Gustavo.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. I think just to what you just covered, Jessica, about the DPR commitment to education and all of that. Where is the county art commissioner's office? Because at the end of the day, I think the art commissioner is the one that is going to receive the reports and violations and all of that. Can we see the county, the agricultural commission's commitment together with the DPR to do that? Because I think to make reports on violations and all of that, it have a lot to do with the residents being comfortable in making the reports. And the current ag commissioner, Glenn, he was with the former agricultural commissioner having meetings in the community. Actually, I have pictures of him meeting with us in Arvin with residents, Glenn. And I think at that time, the former ag commissioner created a very good relationship with the ag commissioner's office and the community was making reports because they felt comfortable in calling the ag commissioner's office. And I think my concern is if it's only DPR doing the education and the ag commissioner is not supportive, we are going to continue with the frustrations that you have been hearing, not only here, but in the chapter project also. I think that needs to change.
I think what I'm hearing, it's really important that these types of things make it in the SERP. And your recommendation, Gustavo, Jose's comments, Bianca's, everyone's comments are really reflective of, we need these in the SERP so we can keep track of them, so we can report on them. I think you all know that this is an ongoing effort through implementation that we're going to have to continue. And so I think making sure that we're comfortable, it's not going to be all of every single detail about every single person's, timeline of between now and the next 5 years, what's going to happen, because, things do change, things evolve, regulations change, even folks in charge change. And so I think just putting the recommendations from the committee in the SERP, clarifying some of that language so you all know the strong commitments from the partners, and then making sure that we leave this, even if, to your point, we don't know today, Gustavo, that could be a question for the county at the June 14th hearing. But even to your point, as we continue to engage and DPR say is the responsible entity, we can continue to engage the county on that piece. But we do have a commitment from the agencies to do a lot of this work. And I think it's important that we all put this in the SERP so we can, continue to track it and to report and be responsive to you all. And it might evolve. It's evolved already in other communities and hopefully evolve in a better, more responsive way as we implement.
It should evolve. It's not acceptable. It's frustrating. It's not your fault, but it's a county agency not being responsive to community.
And I see, go ahead, Daniela.
I was just going to create some space for Ming to share a comment.
Oh yeah, I just kind of wanted to touch base on some of the things that Jess brought up and kind of also address what Gustavo had mentioned here. I think that's why DPR is so, when we're looking at how our involvement, we want to do statewide regulations, because I think at that point, based on our history with county ag commissioners, they follow the regulation once it's out. And I think that's why we want to do this, because then there's not going to be that open-endedness, I think, that people are concerned of. Like, if we come out with a reg, the county ag commissioners all kind of follow suit with that. I don't believe that Glenn will not do it. Our history together indicates that he follows all the regs that we've put out. So I think I will say that for him. One of the things I wanted to kind of just touch on, just the CSC, the enforcement. Happy to have our enforcement team kind of come out and talk to you also about kind of the things that they do. But I think to take a page out of Gustavo's book, the word complaint may legally actually be problematic. I think we should probably look at to see if it's talking about more of the violations, because complaints, not to equate it to Yelp, but sometimes complaints aren't like truly substantial. So there needs to be investigations that go into it, and then once an investigation happens, it's either deemed a violation or not. So I think violation may be a better word choice, and that's something that I can work with Glenn on also to kind of get his input on. But also wanted to echo one other thing. I know that we brought up the sustainable pest management. That is a huge endeavor by our department. So we are very much looking to find better ways of doing agriculture throughout the state. So, it's a big part of what we're doing. And I think that it's a growing sector within DPR. So I'm happy to inform that we take that very seriously, and we're hoping to implement that throughout the state as well.
Thank you. And then just kindly want to remind our speakers that just to speak a little bit slower so that the interpretation can capture everything. When the acronyms are said, they have to kind of say them out fully. So thank you in advance for that. And, given that, I heard a lot of discussion regarding Glenn, I did want to create space for Glenn to share any additional thoughts. I know, Ming mentioned something on your behalf as well, but definitely want to make sure that your thoughts are represented as we're having this important discussion.
If I had anything to say, I think it would be that I think the proper space for this would be at the June 14th meeting in front of the Board of Supervisors.
Thank you, Glenn. Your comments noted. Odon, would you like to share?
Sí. Yo tengo la experiencia de haber estado con el excomisionado de Agricultura, y también yo no sé cómo él puede ser, no sé, no lo entiendo, no sé cómo no quiere trabajar con nosotros como comunidad. Si estamos diciendo lo que nosotros queremos para nosotros, estamos diciendo que no queremos, por ejemplo, los pesticidas no queremos, por ejemplo, nosotros comprar no a nivel estatal, sino a nivel condado. Pero él nunca quería trabajar con nosotros. En mi experiencia que yo tengo es muy mala con él. Yo tengo la experiencia yo no hablo inglés, entiendo poquito, pero no sé, él es una persona, no sé, no quiere trabajar con nosotros, no sé cómo entenderlo, pero no entiendo la manera de que su posición, que no lo deja ser lo que él es, sino que él, no sé, en verdad, no lo entiendo por qué, porque si estamos como comunidad, si él está ahí es por nosotros, no es por nadie más. Pero en realidad, a mí sí yo me frustra que un comisionado de Agricultura no quiere trabajar con nosotros. Estamos nosotros como comunidad. Yo estoy frustrado porque, ¿sabes qué? No quiero yo más para nosotros más, sino que es el mejor para nosotros, lo mejor para nosotros como comunidad. Pero si él no quiere trabajar con nosotros, pues, no sé. En realidad no lo entiendo, no sé cómo explicarlo, no sé cómo sí, pero en realidad esa es mi experiencia que he tenido con él. Gracias.
you, Odon. You know, and as your facilitator, I just want to acknowledge the very valid comments from the community, and you know, also want to be very honest about the situation that we're in, and that is that, you know, we're 15 minutes till 7, where we were hoping to wrap up this meeting, but there seems like there's still a lot of discussion in order to get consensus, you know, on this issue. So, you know, just want to name that.
And I see Bianca's hand. I'll just kind of reflect. You've all heard my commitments to do a lot of clarification to make sure it's very noted and changed in the SERP, and you will see this reflected. It sounds like we're not going to take a vote today, which is great, and it's okay, and I want to take the space. And we will send out in our amended copy of the SERP all of those additions and changes that I've just mentioned, which will include the change that it's a recommendation. It will include clarification and separation of buffers versus notification, and make sure it's strong on all of the engagement that has already happened and will continue to happen, and strong commitments. And then again, follow up with you all on the opportunities to continue this conversation, especially with support for your asks of the Kern County commitments in the SERP. So I'm just summarizing for you all what we've heard and what our commitment to you is, and then I'll take Bianca's comments.
My comment is very small. I wanted to address one thing that as the Ag Commissioner should be doing is to protect public health. And his refusing to even talk to community members and give at least one comment, because he's been participating not only in this community, but in the chapter community, and giving us that type of remark is giving us a big slap in the face. He's not addressing what we are asking, and he is just wanting to be protected by the Kern County Board of Supervisors, and that's not correct. Even though they're there, even though it's part of his bosses, DPR has some type of authority, and we're still trying to find it. We're still trying to find what other way we could work to make this happen. But one individual is holding back a lot of our work, a lot of our frustration, a lot of our health, and we can't wait for June 14th. I'm just gonna give that comment to the Ag Commissioner. We can't wait. We want to see what kind of comments you're going to give out to the Board of Supervisors and what kind of whining you're going to be doing for them. So thank you.
Hi, everyone. You know, just again, very valid. I just want to remind us, you know, this is all very, again, this is your space to share this. And I'll just kind of remind us, you know, to try to keep the conversation at least on the end of not attacking individuals in terms of the, you know, the kind of last phrase. I'll just say that, you know, as a facilitator, I just want to make sure, you know, completely valid and want to hold space for it. And, you know, I'll turn it over to you, Jessica, if you would like to either share anything else from the slides and kind of move us to wrap up. And I'll just say, it's for clarification, I think it might be really important to clarify to the CSC when they'll see the updated language, so that they can confirm whether that language reflects the concerns that are being voiced today.
Absolutely. So I'm going to share my screen. And these are the next steps that we anticipate. Because as you know, and I don't have something in here that's really important, and that's this Friday. So in 2 days, we will send out a new copy of the SERP. Not hearing anything against the 2 additions I just discussed, as well as the amendments that I reflected based on Gustavo and Jose and Odon and Bianca's comments. You will see those reflected in the updated SERP. There are also a couple things that we have amended based on some small feedback that I didn't quite have time to review today, but we will make sure we highlight them for you in the SERP. So the SERP will include highlights where things were added or changed, so you know where to jump to in the document and take a look at what the additions and changes were. That gives you more time to, as Daniela mentioned, to see the comments reflected. I know, and you know, because not even the things that are included in the SERP, besides pesticides, we know that not everything was 100% supported. Some of them were 96%. Some of them were 75%. So there's a lot of great consensus and compromise being done on behalf of the community. And it sounds like one of the things we have to just think about when we take a vote on the SERP, based on all of the commitments that you just heard from me about the pesticide measures, about all of those changes that you will get to see, there has to be a little acknowledgement on our end, on CARB's end, on DPR's end, on the Ag Commissioner's end, on the CSC's end of, it's not 100% of what I as an individual wanted, but do I support, like, do I want to support this and move this forward? Are there things in here that I want to support, that I want moved forward? Knowing that maybe we still have to have discussions about things that didn't get included, and that's okay. We've done that, like I said, and we continue to hold space for that. And we as a group are learning to continue to hold space for things that aren't a part of the SERPs. And so that is to say, we have a lot of amendments you will see on the pesticides based on our discussion. You will see a couple of other things. And then on June 6th, as Gustavo Aguirre Jr., our co-lead, mentioned, we will have a meeting. It will be a stipendable meeting, even though it will be very short, because we want to acknowledge that you are so important for that meeting. It will start at 5:30. We will send out all the details because we know some folks can't make it on right at 5. So we will intentionally move it back. We will start at 5:30. We will answer any quick clarifying questions about the process. Between now and then, please, reach out to us after you see the draft. And then we'll take a vote. And we will do a voice vote, so everyone's voice will be heard and we can document the yeses and the nos. And that vote will be to take the SERP to the governing board and to our district governing board on June 16th. We have to get that published for our board to see a week ahead of time. So you will see that published on June 9th. And it will be the SERP that you voted on, if that's the vote that happens. In between now and then is that June 14th board meeting. We will send notice out about that meeting. And as I mentioned, the Kern County Board of Supervisors will then forward a letter to us about their support of the individual county recommendations and commitments. And then, not exactly certain when, but we believe in October, CARB will also hear this. As Gus mentioned at the top, this also goes to the CARB board. And so there'll be a lot of opportunity actually between June and October to work with CARB to kind of give them your feedback as well. So there's lots of great feedback that they're interested in getting, and a lot of great work we can do between now and then. So I will stop sharing my screen and pass it to Gus and then Daniela.
Yeah, thank you so much, and thank you all for these conversations. Right, that like if there's questions that need to be asked, clarifying information that needs to be clarified, this is the time, right? I just want to make like an observation for the June 16th meeting, which is a Kern County Board of Supervisors meeting.
14th is
14th, I'm sorry, 14th. And so that, just to be very clear, that is totally independent of the AB 617 SERP that will be approved by the Valley Air District. Yes. And so regardless if the county moves forward or not with, SERP strategies, here for AB 617 South Kern, we're still going to move forward with the strategies that we all vote on. Right. And then in addition, if the Board of Supervisors, adopts and likes the SERPs, then we'll see a ripple effect at the countywide level. Right. So it would enhance that greater amount, obviously not using 617 funding. So I just want to make sure that folks are aware that the Kern County Board of Supervisors will be an additional kind of commitment that Lorelei and others thankfully stepped up to. And if this isn't that we move forward with the Board of Supervisors, it'll be in addition to the 617 South Kern work.
Correct. The board, our district board, will hear the SERP as it is approved by the CSC. independent. The Board of Supervisors, correct, is to support and provide additional support or clarification about the county's piece of the 617 process. Thank you, Daniela, and thank you, Gus.
Thank you all. With that, if there are no other comments about the presentation or the next steps, we can move us on to start wrapping up. And Jessica, I wasn't entirely sure about the kind of items that you imagine will be touched on at the June meeting, but once we get to that moment, maybe we can, if you have any initial thoughts of what might be coming down to give folks an idea. But just to reiterate, I've shared my screen with the next meetings that are coming upon us. And so as Jessica mentioned, there's a special meeting that's going to start at 5:30. So a little later than our usual start time to give folks enough time. And then that one's going to run, you know, we imagine till 6:30. So hoping to wrap up a little bit before our usual end time, only because the focus is just on the vote and the voting procedure. You can, you know, anticipate having a small groups for the voting, where we'll divide you all up into breakout rooms. There will be a facilitator that ends up documenting your verbal vote at that point. And so we'll go through the voting procedures at that point as well. And then just to mention, we'll have a regular meeting on June 22nd, and that is on the Wednesday back to the regular time. And both are on Zoom. Gustavo, I can take a question.
Yeah, very quick. I think for the June 6th for the voting, if you can maybe have a slide showing the change language, especially for the pesticides. I think that's that was the discussion. I think just for everybody, because not everybody have the chance to review you know, the agenda or the draft before, so that can help just to confirm, you know, everybody, each committee member can see it and you know, are comfortable in voting.
Would it help if we sent out, mailed out copies to folks ahead of time, just the handful, the small, so they don't have to review 180 pages, but just the small change, like the one page of the pesticide that changed, so folks have it in their hand and they have a chance to take a look at it on their own. They don't have to look up at the screen. And I'm asking that just so that with this being intentionally a vote, because it will be the hopefully, you know, final vote that folks can take a look at, there's not a lot of changes made on the day of. We'd like to hear those ahead of time if possible.
Yeah, I think for me it can work. I think it will be easier just to include, you know, in the mailing or emailing that you will share.
Okay.
Just the changes, and maybe a statement on the top saying that these are the only changes to the draft that we received.
Yep, I hear you. I think that's a great idea.
Thank you, Gustavo. Michelle?
I just want to mention that Jessica had the timeline of things coming up, and the CARB board hearing will be in October. But prior to that, we'll definitely have a workshop with you all to take information about this process and any other input you have about the SERP. And I believe we've talked about having that at what would be the normal June meeting.
I think,
is that right?
I'm not certain about that. I think that's something we'll discuss with the co-leads. Just to share with you all, given that we're asking you to attend an additional June meeting, a Board of Supervisors hearing, a district board meeting, we're potentially, and we'll work with the co-leads, but we'll potentially make our next meeting actually July and not have that June meeting, since that's 3 meetings in a row. But then we will work with CARB on whether it's July or August or on something like that. So thanks, Michelle.
Okay. All right. Just letting you all know it is coming up. We'll figure out a date. Thanks.
Thank you, Michelle. And thank you for clarifying that, Jessica. So, okay, so folks can expect to get notification from the Air District about probably very likely canceling that June 22nd meeting and picking it back up in July. And that would be on the usual time, usual week, and via Zoom, I presume. Okay. Great, thank you. Okay, if I don't see any other hands, so at this point, I'd love to invite my colleague Liz to just recap the action items that came out of today's meeting. So I'll turn the floor to you, Liz. And please, as a reminder, let us know what action items were not captured appropriately. And we want to make sure that we make those changes in front of you so that those action items are reflective of what you heard today.
Yep, so I'll just share my screen and possibly zoom in. This is a little too small.
We see your screen versus the document.
Oh. How about that?
Yes. Yeah, maybe
Okay.
zoom in a little bit more if it's, yeah, thank you.
Okay. So definitely as I go through these, as Daniela said, please feel free to jump in and clarify or change anything. So the first one is to modify pesticide measure SERP language to distinguish between the commitments to the buffer zones and mitigation versus the notification system. Next is to strengthen the language in the SERP pesticide measure to specify the committee's ask and recommendations rather than just their concerns. Next is CSC members are invited to share their concerns about pesticides at the June 14th meeting with the Board of Supervisors. Next, the Air District will follow up with the CSC about opportunities to continue the pesticide conversation. Next, the Air District will send the CSC an updated draft of the SERP this Friday on May 27th. The Air District will send the CSC details about the June 6th extra meeting for the SERP vote. The Air District will send the CSC a document that clearly shows the updated language specific to that pesticide measure. And last is the Air District will send the CSC notification of whether the next regular meeting will be in July and not June, given the several other additional meetings. Does that all sound right, or are there any questions or modifications about these?
I see some thumbs up, but definitely raise your hand if you have any amendments to these. And I'm seeing none so far.
Okay.
Thank you, Liz, for those. And we're getting to wrap up in a moment. Just want to check with the team if there are any discrepancies to the attendance that we still need to resolve.
I think we're good.
Wonderful. With that, I thank you all for engaging in a very honest and productive discussion. Your communities will be better off by all the concerns and just discussion that you have. So I thank all the agencies for being here in conversation. And then I'll turn it over to the community co-leads, and then after that to Jessica to have final words. Go ahead, Gustavo.
Yes, so yeah, thank you again. And just for process sake, like the next immediate steps, the district will finish kind of the final SERP language. We'll send it out to all the CSC members. We will review it and then reconvene again on June 6th to do the final vote of this SERP, correct? Okay.
Thank you. We got thumbs up from Jessica. And actually, I do want to, hold space for public comment. I'm realizing that we didn't go to that just yet. So before, Jessica, you should have the final word on these to adjourn us, but just want to take a moment to see if there are any members of the public that are on here that wanted to make a comment about anything that's top of mind. So again, just before we adjourn, I want to just take a moment. If you're a member of the public and you would like to make a comment, please raise your hand and we'll go ahead and give you some space for that. I didn't see any hands raised at this time, but I'll give folks a minute or so. And I'll be looking at the screen. Is there any members of the public that want to make a comment? I'm not seeing any. So at this time, I'll turn it over to you, Jessica. And if anyone's hand pops up, I'll let you know. But thank you, everyone.
Thank you. I'll just, I'll end by reflecting the emotional start to this meeting and what Daniela allowed us to reflect on. I know it hits a lot of us hard, and it's been rough. And so having the hard conversations we had today, and the great feedback and engagement and continued, what I hear is support for us agencies who are, working to hear you all. I'm glad we get to do this work with you all. And I hope that you all feel that because I know we do, we feel this and we feel how hard it is. And we want to keep hearing the stories that you share with us about your community. So thank you for allowing us to do this. I know that all of the great measures you've put in your SERP will continue to improve the lives of the folks in this room and all of your family members. And so I hope that we get a chance to put it in action very, very shortly. And I definitely just want to thank Gus Jr. and Bianca for being such fabulous co-hosts and such just great colleagues to bounce ideas off of, and for all of you residents who spend all of your time with us. So speaking of time, we're over, so I won't kind of go on my little spiel here, but I appreciate all of you, each and every one of you, and look forward to seeing you guys soon.
Bianca, any final remarks on your end?
Well, that we've been working on this process for a while already. I've seen how residents have been fighting for AB 617 to happen. Now that we have it, I know I speak a lot on my emotional piece, and I should not let it get to me, but I'm here to protect public health, here to support everybody's comments, and especially resident comments. At the end of the day, because of them, we have AB 617 in our community. And I wanted to address that whatever recommendations residents have, I'm going to be supporting 110%. I'm always going to back up the residents.
Thank you so much for those comments, for all of you, and for your dedication. I will just wish you all a good night, and take care, and let's take care of each other. Thank you.
Good night, everyone.
Thank you. Good night.
Take care.